Zimbabwe and Iran established diplomatic relations back in February 1983. And of course, over time, relations between the two countries have continued to grow tremendously. And under the Second Republic, Zimbabwe sent a good number of high-level delegations to Iran. And likewise, Iran has done the same, sending as well high-level missions to Zimbabwe. And as we speak, the president of Iran is in Zimbabwe for a state visit, where we get to understand more in terms of the significance of that. And this visit is coming at the back of the 8th and the 9th sessions of Zimbabwe-Iran Joint Permanent Commissions on Cooperation, popularly known as the JPCC. And the first one was held in Harare in August 2023. The second one was held in Iran in February 2023. Now to talk about this in terms of its significance and how it can help the country move forward. Hello, this is Economics 101. My name is Ian Vambe, and today in the building to understand what exactly is happening between Zimbabwe and Iran, how does Zimbabwe get to benefit economically, we are joined by two interesting gentlemen. We have got Ambassador Christopher Mtranga, who is a ZANU-PF spokesperson, and we also have Dr. Zach Murerwa, who is an economic analyst. Gentlemen, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you.
Good evening.
Ambassador, let's start by understanding the significance of the visit that we've seen the Iranian president coming to Zimbabwe. We know of the historical context that Zimbabwe and Iran do have relations. Now, can you just unpack the significance of this particular visit?
Well, it's a very, very important visit between the two countries that President Raisi is in Zimbabwe. He has been to Kenya, he has been to Uganda, now he's in Zimbabwe. This is at a time when Iran is on an offensive, an outward offensive, courting friendships, particularly with the Global South. It is coming out of a very tough period of very painful American sanctions, similar to the ones which we have been through as Zimbabwe.
Right.
So we are two sanctioned friends, sanctioned by the superpower, the only superpower which is in the world. But they are breaking out of that sanctions just as much as we are also breaking out of the stranglehold of American sanctions. Last month, I think he was in Latin America. He went to Venezuela, another sanctioned country. And then he went to Cuba. I think it was Cuba and another American country. Then afterwards, he went to the rising superpower of the Southeast Asia, which is Indonesia. And, China has recently brokered an agreement where the two powerful neighbors in the Middle East, Iran and Saudi Arabia, have coming together. So there is a new sense of camaraderie coming out of Tehran, and they're extending it now to Africa, which they view as a continent of opportunities. And today we are having in Zimbabwe old friends indeed. For those who may want to remember, our history of freedom, one of the heaviest body blows which was delivered to Ian Smith was when Iran was shifted from being an appendage of America under the Shah of Iran, Reza Pahlavi, and it became a revolutionary Iran under the Ayatollah Ruhollah Khomeini in 1978. And one of the first bold acts which he did was to sanction Rhodesia by refusing to supply crude oil to the Feruka refinery. Remember, the Feruka refinery was built for Iranian oil. So it was sanctioned by Iran, and Smith suddenly had no fuel. It made his war machine start to falter. Of course, we compounded it as Zanla guerrillas by the attack on the fuel complex in Southampton. Those were body blows, and Iran was one of the most demoralizing advents from our war against Ian Smith.
And I know that when you start to go in East Ambassador, you can take 24 hours explaining to us all those things. Now, to bring you to the conversation, Dr. Murerwa, let's understand in terms of the MoUs that have been seen being signed between Zimbabwe and Iran. We have got 12 MoUs in the agriculture, health and child care. Can you talk to us on the significance of these MoUs?
Yeah, for the benefit of the viewers, let me just highlight the importance of exploring geopolitical spaces that arise on the economic front. If you look at the mantra, the motto that Zimbabwe has adopted, right? Friends to all, enemy to none.
Right.
If you look at the trade preferences that Zimbabwe has had, it's open-ended in terms of saying, no, look, we'll neither look here, east or west or neither thereabout. We are totally open for business. And this visit becomes very critical from a perspective of foreign direct investment. When you talk about MoUs, I have seen, and historically, people just describing MoUs as documents. No, they are not. They are a manifestation of a clear economic path of recovery in particular sectors. So be it tourism, be it the energy sector that Ambassador was talking about, be it mining, and so on and so forth. So the 12 MoUs that have been signed today will go a long way in increasing our gross domestic product. Because what we need as Zimbabwe is to increase our ratio on foreign direct investment, because we are not capacitated in some respects in terms of the industrialization drive. So it's very difficult to get a nation where you totally click, and through joint commissions and binational agreements, it's going to benefit us. So ultimately, the downstream benefits would result in industrialization, employment creation in those various sectors, trade, that is going to be increased. As what President Raisi said, that Africa is a continent of opportunities. So is Zimbabwe. It is a continent of opportunities. We are endowed with natural resources. We have comparative advantages, but sometimes we lack the technology, the expertise, and we hope these binational agreements will help us in those respects.
Ambassador Mtrangwa, let's get to understand the significance of MoUs. Some people would want to know whether how binding is the MoU and whether it brings results that the Zimbabweans would be looking forward. When you hear that the Iranian president is in the country, MoUs have been signed, how binding are these and what sort of results can be expected from that?
You see, an MoU is a product of interaction between business partners. They agree at that level first. Then they seek the support of the two respective governments to create the environment to make sure that the MoUs are put to work. So we have 12 MoUs with Iran right now. They cover the pharmaceutical sector, one of them. They are going to be building a production line for pharmaceuticals in this country. This is an area where we singularly need outward investment. And remember, Iran is one of the most advanced countries in the pharmaceutical sector.
In terms of that,
Yes, they were a rich country for many years because of their oil. They worked with the Western countries when the Shah of Iran was in charge. So they developed advanced technologies in various fields, of which the pharmaceutical sector is one of them. Their medicines are up to scratch, but more important, their production systems are very affordable. And they have a lot of intellectual property in their own right. We don't have to pay through the nose for intellectual property, which we do to the big pharmaceutical companies of the West, which are extortionate and make Africans pay through, they have a difficult time accessing medicine. So this is a good thing for Iran to come and put a production line right here in Zimbabwe. Iran is also good in agriculture equipment. Remember I told you they used to work with the best of American equipment, and they've remained with that intellectual property. They produce massive Ferguson tractors. These are
of course, talk of agriculture, there is an important role when it comes to how agric is key in terms of the country achieving Vision 2030. We are going to take a short break. When you come back, Ambassador and Dr. Murerwa will go on to explain the significance of this visit, especially at the larger scale of the country's economic development. This is the second segment of your favorite program, Economics 101, and today it's all about unpacking the significance of relations between Zimbabwe and Iran. As you know that His Excellency President Seyyed Ebrahim Raisi is in Zimbabwe for a state visit, and there, of course, we have talked about it in the first segment. 12 MoUs signed, and in the building we do have Ambassador Mchangwa and Dr. Murerwa to really help us unpack some of the issues around these. Now, let's talk about technology. I know he touched on agriculture earlier on, but within the area of technology, how does Zimbabwe benefit from relating to Iran in terms of moving forward?
Now, if you look at in terms of human capacities, the technological hubs, the technological advancement that Iran has, we can consolidate this. Look at what we've done in terms of our universities through Education 5.1. And we have done a lot in terms of innovation hubs, in terms of technology, in terms of that which we need to have. Not that we are totally incapacitated. I think we have got a very good human resource, but we need transfer of technology, transfer of skills in various sectors. And you was talking about the pharmaceutical. And I was looking, for example, following the visit by the Vice President, I think it was sometime in February, right, where I look at how Iran has actually advanced in terms of technology in the pharmaceutical, in the health sector. It's just amazing. So that's what we need to complement the current government efforts, so that when you buy into your 14 national priority areas, you have the necessary backup in terms of the technological hub.
You speak of our universities, and I know that we now have University of Zimbabwe in collaboration with other universities are producing the number plates. And among other initiatives that are happening, we know we've got those innovation hubs. What do you think needs to be done within that line of innovation to really tap into what Iran has to benefit Zimbabwe?
Right. So what you need to do, we are saying the innovation is the introductory aspect in terms of hubs. So what you want to do now is to blow this to a commercial scale, so that the technologies, the things that you see that our youth, our youngsters are doing, look at what HIT is doing as an example. Just amazing, amazing technology.
Production of transformers.
Yes. So what you need to do is to have foreign direct investments, so that you create economies of scale that are sustainable in terms of our desired infrastructure in what we have at the moment. And we believe an agreement through which would actually ignite foreign direct investment would have that transfer of technology. And I know is well capacitated in that, and that is in the right direction.
Ambassador, you are a farmer in your own right.
Yes.
Agricultural-wise, I know that Zimbabwe's economy is anchored or pillared on agriculture, and His Excellency is on record saying agriculture and mining are two of our key economic pillars when it comes to the economic turnaround. What do you think Zimbabwe can do to benefit immensely from Iran when it comes to agriculture?
Well, in the first instance, we already have a very big trade with Iran in a particular crop, the leaf tobacco sector. Remember, Iran has got a population of 80 to 90 million people. That's a major population by any standards.
And a big market for tobacco.
And a big market for tobacco. But beyond that, Iran trades with all its neighbors. So it is really the entry point of most of the products which are sold to its neighbors, Azerbaijan, Afghanistan, all the Stanis in that area. So Iran could become a major entrepôt, a port where we distribute our goods and services, to the various markets of the former Soviet bloc countries. Iran is a good entry point. And remember also, Iran has got very good technology, in many fields, because of course, we've got to take it. Remember, when we talk about Mesopotamia, long way back, 4,000 years ago, we are talking of Iran. We are talking of Persia. Remember the Persian Wars. These are people who have always been creative and innovative, and they've had a continuous civilization literally for more than 4,000 years. So it's an organic country, but it's our neighbor. Through the Indian Ocean, people tend to think of trade with Zimbabwe and Europe, but we've got to go round South Africa throughout the Atlantic. Our natural neighborhood is the literal Indian Ocean, of which Iran is part of that. So historically, we have been together with Iran in Africa, even during our great civilizations. Kilwa on the Rovuma River in Tanzania was a trading relationship with Zimbabwe well before the Portuguese came. So we are establishing historical relationships in which were renewed, of course, by the Iranian Revolution. So in agriculture, They're a big market. They are also a big access market to other areas. And they also can bring equipment. Remember, we had Messi Ferguson tractors from Iran being assembled.
Quite popular in Zimbabwe.
Yeah, they were very popular, but it was not from America, it was from Iran. We could have a production line now. We need 40,000 tractors. Iran could be a substantial supplier because they're a major producer of equipment. But even at the forefront of technology, look at what they've done with the drones. America, Russia is using Iranian drones, which even Russia is to admit they reverse engineer the American technology. They are at the forefront of software engineering, Iranians. So for Education 5.0, the jump from education to skills, which requires investment, which requires transfer of knowledge. Iran is already the production lines. You don't have to invent the wheel. You can be educated. You can do a lot of research, but you cannot be, it's not easy to apply that knowledge because you need capital. And Iran is a major producer of oil. It has a lot of capital in its own right. It is one of the main suppliers of energy to the world. So capital is not an issue for Iran per se. But they also have this experience of surviving on their own in adversity against American sanctions. That's what we want to tap on.
Talking of sanctions, Ambassador, we want to zero in on that now. We know that Iran is also under sanctions. Zimbabwe is under sanctions. And these countries that have been sanctioned are now forming up collaborations. They're now coming together as coalitions. What does it say about the impact of sanctions on countries that will say, regardless of sanctions, we'll work together and go forward?
Well, it just means that we are telling America that you cannot load it off forever against other countries because sanctions create their own means of survival instincts. So we have now developed our own survival instincts under the Second Republic, and President Mnangagwa has really taken the country forward in terms of fighting sanctions by not being complaining indigently and lazily, but by actually being innovative and circumventing them to the point where America now is saying we can't beat them, we might as well join them. This is exactly what Iran has also done. It has shown America that you can survive the onslaught of a superpower in a world which is beginning to be multipolar. But remember, I was talking about the population dividend.
Yes.
For 5,000 years, the center of humanity has been Africa, Europe, and Asia. This is where more than 6 billion people live, 5 billion people live. India, China, and now there's all these countries, Iran, Turkey, they are coming on board. So that whole area, we are beginning to interact outside of the Atlantic seaboard powers, the naval powers of France, England, America. So this is a big opportunity with railways, with aeroplanes.
Utilizing the numbers.
Yes, we've got the numbers, the advantage of numbers. So with Iran, it's numbers, but also proximity because of the Indian Ocean. So this is a very, very wholesome relationship which goes back to the original grain of commercial relations which made the great Zimbabwe civilization prosper for 8 centuries.
It is an indication of
Dr. Muliro, I might have to stop you. They were going to really continue in terms of that narrative because we do have so many to talk about. We're going to take a short break. When we come back, we'll get to the thing of all the issues. This is the third and final segment of this week's edition of Economics 101. Now, before we went for the break, Doctor, you wanted to explain in terms of how to utilize the numbers to really our advantage.
Yeah, I was saying, following what the ambassador said, the shift in the geopolitical economic environment has also prompted us as a nation to search for markets also. But in your search for markets, one must understand, and you are guided by, for example, our beautiful blueprint. We have got a vision 2030. If you read all the intricacies associated with those blueprints, one is looking at it and say, what are the global markets? What are the dynamics? Look at Africa as what is happening now. If you look at the debate that has been going on in terms of free trade, if you look at the African free trade, continental free trade area, which is wanting to bring in, break barriers, strengthen the ability of the continent to search for global markets, you can only do that through relationship with other countries. Now, when you look at what probably President Raisi is bringing in the desired markets, the desired technology, and in terms of our thrust, I think the thrust generally of the Second Republic has been to tap on our resources, value add them, beneficiate them, send them outside to earn foreign currency. That is a search for markets. So when you look at globalization, which is a reality, it talks about those markets and opportunities. And we want to say, okay, here is Iran, who has agreed to tap into Latin America, agreed to tap into Africa, and agreed to tap into Zimbabwe. Surely it's a worthwhile opportunity.
Ambassador, earlier on we referred to the historical background in terms of the relations between Zimbabwe and Iran. And you know that within spaces like the media, and talking of ZBC, has also benefited from some of the equipment coming through from Iran. Can you just explain in terms of how do we continue on that same line, receiving equipment, technology, so that the country will continue to develop economically?
Well, Iran has been a strategic friend, like I told you, before independence. You may want to know that our present president was actually in Iran in 1979.
Before independence?
Before independence, he went to Iran, when we were not even a country. So they value this relationship between President Emerson Mnangagwa and the Iranian leadership. It goes back to many years. And he's building upon that. He recently, the First Lady, spent a lot of time, striking very sound relationships between, the women's wing of our party, but also the women in general, on a number of projects which could be pursued jointly, between the two countries. But there's also, to add synergies, to add flavor to what has been talking about, using Iran as a market to the Middle East and elsewhere. There's also the other side, which is Iran using Zimbabwe as a launch pad for the Africa Free Trade Area. Remember, it's a major industrial power in its own right, which has survived the toughest of American sanctions, and it has used its historical experience to trade with Europe to become a major industrial power. It has products, world-class products, which are in search of a market and are affordable. So Iran, in these agreements, is looking at Zimbabwe's very well-developed human resource base as a launch pad for its products into Africa. They want Zimbabwe to become a hub of powerful industrial companies from Iran, so that they produce in Zimbabwe, in special economic zones within Zimbabwe, and penetrate the 1.3 billion African market, which is now at 3 to 4 trillion, and growing because of the young population in Africa. So we have a huge opportunity of harnessing our security, our political, our diplomatic, our historical friendship in Iran through these joint commissions which we are having, so that we sell Iranian products, we become a bridge of Iranian products into Africa at a time when Iran is breaking out. It is breaking out, become a major industrial power. They are not the only ones. Turkey is doing the same thing. Iran is doing the same thing. Indonesia is doing the same thing. So we've got this wholesome, virtuous arrival of new economic powers. All of them, they are looking at Zimbabwe because we've carved our identity as a strong, powerful, independent African state, and much more business attuned under President Mnangagwa.
But what then becomes important, let me just add on to what Ambassador is saying. That is all good, well and fine. What then becomes important is the transfer of technology and skills to enable us to be self-sufficient in the long run. Yet the economic dependency syndrome, which must not be perpetuated, that eventually has to come to a stop. So what you need now, you need that push effect in terms of the economic dynamics to tell us now this is where we desired to be. And we need the investment vehicles. Yes, as he has said, we are very well endowed with human capacities. Our human capital base is very good in Zimbabwe. But what you need now is to adapt and adopt certain technologies that are user-friendly to ourselves, to our policies, our climatic conditions, that are understood by our people, by our farmers, by our industrialists, so that there is an element of what I might call indigenous understanding in terms of the technology that we'll get. So I don't think those who fear that total translation of expertise is tantamount to sort of economic colonization. That is investment.
Quite interesting discussions when we, time has got a way of actually limiting us to the discussions. Ambassador, in 60 seconds, what are your last words to our Zimbabweans who are watching you today?
I'm very happy that President Raisi is here. I'm very happy that we are renewing our friendship with Iran, and President Mnangagwa, who is an old friend of Iran from pre-independence days, is now in charge and has got pro-business policies. We want to make sure that Iranian capital, Iranian technology, and Iranian know-how in management expertise makes Zimbabwe its home and uses Zimbabwe as a launch pad for it to penetrate Africa. And vice versa, we want Zimbabwean products made in Zimbabwe, world-class products, to find new markets, particularly in the Middle East, which has always been the center of humanity, for more than 5,000 years. We want to work with Iran for the penetration of the huge Eurasian market from Europe to Asia to Africa, where most of humanity is. And Iran is snug at the center of the world in terms of the population dynamics.
Dr. Marero, your last words to our listeners.
We are finally, and I'm happy we are getting right in terms of the economic fundamentals, in terms of the external liaison that we need to have, in terms of soliciting for foreign direct investment, in terms of technology transfer. We are beginning to find, and I think the Second Republic is finding the correct formula. We can do it.
Yes.
Zimbabweans, we will succeed.
Thank you so much, Ambassador Mtrango, for coming through to the studio. Really help us unpack these issues, as well as Dr. Murerwa for coming through with an economic mindset to really help us understand how Zimbabwe can move forward from here. That's all we had for you on today's episode of Economics 101. My name is Ian Wambe.